Basketball fans everywhere, appreciate you for joining me back live. Once again, this is episode number, where are we at? 102 now, I think it is, of what we like to call the best, the most entertaining, the most informational, and the most educational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast, none other than Tate's Take. So, I know I've been gone for a minute. People are like, where my boy been at? You probably get a notification like, this must be like happened by mistake or accident. I'm getting notifications dinging on my phone saying Deshaun's doing a podcast. I know he ain't did it in a while, but we just been trying to get some things tightened up. Let's just say some loose screws tightened up, iron out some wrinkles. Year 2022, not just doing it just because, but make sure that we're going into things with a plan and not just trying to put stuff together and doing it just for the sake of. So trying to be as strategic as possible. And I'm really excited about today's guest and episode, especially because of the fact that it's a new year. And, you know, every time I'm kind of looking for some positivity among some other things, I can always find some in my guests. A very spiritual person, a very religious person, a very cool, super dope, super cool, very loyal friend. Hard worker in this business, and I don't want to say too much while she's in the green room because I want to be able to say it to people's faces. That's just the way that I like to do things. So I first want to make sure I let everybody know thanks so much for coming out and being a part of the program on today. Be sure to follow along on all social media platforms at Tate's Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS. Streaming live on Twitter as well as on YouTube, on Facebook. I see y'all out there that's been asking for this episode. And just make sure that you go and just follow along on all platforms. Make sure you tell a friend, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your mama, tell your baby mama, tell your grandmama, tell everybody where they can find it. That's at Tate's Take Hoops. And without further ado, let's go ahead and try and stop running my mouth for the first time. Says everybody, but I don't think there's a possibility that that can even happen. So let's go ahead and bring my girl on into the room. Here she is. Perfect. I got it like right on time. I'm so glad. Let me say this in introduction. I'm so glad that I had an opportunity to bring her in because not only do I know I don't get nearly enough women that come on, as many as there is that I know that are in this business. I try and be very particular about who it is, but I don't want to bring them on before I bring her on. So I'm very careful about that. And then just people of color in general, and just people that I know values my passion,
Yes.
and what I bring, to my with the content that I provide and just basketball in general. And nobody probably understands that more than the person who's been pretty much my neighbor throughout the entire time of us working together, just about for so many years. That's Tenitra Batiste, color commentator. I mean, get ready because the resume list is extremely long. Reporter, sports anchor, radio host, also in-game analyst. We're especially going to be talking about today on HawkTawk for the Atlanta Hawks. That's Tenitra Batiste. Tenitra, welcome to Tate's Take. I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to be a part of this and found some kind of space in your schedule to be able to join. I don't know how you did it, but I appreciate you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deshaun. It has been a crazy 24 hours, a crazy week, a crazy month to start 2022 off. So yeah, I appreciate you for just taking the space because of course you and I, we talk whether it's by phone, in person, or through text just about every day. And so of course the first person I thought of, and likewise, was you, like, oh my, like we got to talk about what is
Yeah.
going on today for the Hawks. Crazy, crazy.
Yeah, it is. It has been very crazy. Just we start looking at some of the breaking news and just things that's just been alerting all day today, and just talking about the NBA and
Hmm.
very busy time, knowing that there's some moves that needed to be made within
Yeah.
the Atlanta Hawks organization, within that franchise, within itself, and definitely want to get. Let's do this first before we even start really getting into the Hawk stuff. I do have
Hmm.
just one or two questions I do want to ask you because, you know, as people of color that work in this business, we talk all the time. We have our own ways and thoughts and feelings towards a lot of different things. And I want to
Mhm.
really ask you, because one thing that we do share is being two people that are people of color that work in the media business. But what we don't share and is mutually is the fact that you're a lady. And with that being said, lots have changed
Yes.
over the course of the last 365 days plus. What kind of impact or things have you seen through your lens, the way that this business and just some of the challenges, do you kind of feel like some of the challenges and so forth have um, lessened at all, or is this just I'm just so happy to see you in this space, and I
Yeah.
know that it's not always easy, so I'm just kind of curious to know what kind of approach that you've been able to take and have had to take with everything that is going on and working in this business as long as you have, and the changes that have been made within it.
Yeah, I will tell you, Deshaun, and two examples, maybe three, come to mind. For me, I believe that yes, we have made some strides, which is great. Made a lot of strides even in the last year, if you will, but we have so far to go in this industry. We have literally just scratched the surface of what we can do to evolve the industry as it relates to opening up opportunities for people of color, for women, just all points in between. So, three thoughts that came to mind for me when you posed that question. One was, of course, the news of the Yankees hiring a female for manager for one of their affiliate teams, right? So that was exciting. I am a Yankees fan. I will admit that. Yankees and Braves, don't get it twisted. Long story of how that happened. We're not going to even go there today. But it made my soul smile. That's my favorite thing to say. When something makes my soul smile, that means that hits me deep because that tells me, hey, we're making a little stride there, if you will. So I was excited to hear about that. Another opportunity, which really was one for me, was just being able to cover the Celebration Bowl as one of the two national sideline reporters this past year. So my second year doing it, but the excitement was in that it was the first year I got to talk to a female commissioner of one of the major college conferences in Black college sports. So again, to have made that shift, if you asked me, Deshaun, when I started this journey with the Celebration Bowl in 2020, because of course we didn't have one, or 2019, we didn't have one in 2020. If you had asked me if would have been speaking to a female commissioner, I don't know if I would have told you the answer would have been yes, honestly. So we have made some strides. And then thirdly, same thing. If you had asked me maybe 2019, 2020, if I thought, even though there is the amazing Tiffany Green who does color commentary, play by play, sideline reporting, she does it all. But if you had
Mhm.
asked me, hey, do you think you'll be doing color commentary for college football in 2021? Again, I don't know that the answer would have been yes. So there have definitely been some strides, but we do have still a long way to go. But this is a start, Deshaun. When you and I get seats at the table, then we know we're
Mhm.
making some progress in the right direction.
No doubt, and it may have seemed a little off a little bit. I know that I didn't really prep you for some of this, but I wanted to put on this platform because I think that especially for me, it's important with it being such a male-dominated field. So women have to go through definitely something a little bit different. I would imagine that most guys have to working in such a male-dominated field and so forth, and just coming across so many women that are very bright and very knowledgeable about the game of basketball. And I know we've even had recent conversations with different
Yes.
people I've had about, Becky Hammonds and maybe, getting the job to be able to be the first NBA coach in the history of, of the sport.
Hmm.
And that's a whole nother conversation. But even more so the fact that I'm not sure that I know any women. We could definitely get into Hawks after this, but I want to give you your flowers, especially with this too, because I'm not sure that I know another like in game like analyst. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
on this level, that is a woman. And then there may be anybody else or overlook anybody else, but I'm not sure that I know anybody else. So when I'm at those games and I'm covering those games, or I'm going as a fan, or just whatever the case may be, and I'm seeing on the big board, and it's not doing what most people typically see women do, which is, help out with some of the, half game, throwing out the t-shirts and doing some of the
Hmm.
special events and different things during timeouts and so forth. This is actually breaking down the game as
Yes.
an analyst.
Yes.
And I want to give you your flowers on that, but just want you to touch on that experience for those who are going to be able to attend, and if they haven't already, been able to go to State Farm Arena and it be pregame or halftime of the Hawks game, and hear some of your different takes and views and things that you see through your eyes, which is always intriguing to me. Talk about what that experience has been like for
Yeah.
you and just how that opportunity came about.
Yeah, one thing I will say all the time, especially if you are in a marginalized group or a minority group, you have to have an advocate. You have to have someone who has a seat at the table who's willing to say, "Hey, have you ever thought about this person?" So I actually spoke to one of my advocates earlier today, so I got to shout him out, or two of my advocates today, in fact, and a third. So of course, you and I met several years ago at 92.9 The Game. And both of us have served in the capacity of Hawks reporter for the station. But
Mm.
unfortunately, just working the morning show the last few years, I haven't been able to be that reporter. I could only cover one or two games, right? So anytime anyone came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to do something for the," they didn't even have to finish the sentence. If it was Hawks, the answer is always yes. So Sean Thompson, who has just done a yeoman's job in really running day-to-day operations for 92.9, he was approached by the Hawks. One of our colleagues was unable to do their pregame show, right? There's a digital pregame show that the Hawks do for every home game.
Mm.
And they said, "Hey, do you have anyone else that you would recommend?" And he recommended me first. So let's start right there, Deshaun. Whomever was going to do it initially, which would have been the right person, shout out to my guy, Andy Bunker, but he wasn't able to. I was the person that Sean came up with first. That for me was very powerful because, again, a lot of times that female is not the first or quote unquote logical answer or choice. But the Hawks, shout out to them for saying, "Okay, cool." So their digital host for that pregame show, who by the way is a female, she and I were able to get together. And one of the first pieces of feedback she got was, "Wow, great chemistry. I could tell that Tenitra was prepared and we want her back." So went back a couple other times, even did the same thing for their draft party, for the Hawks draft party, and then got a call about this position from Donnie Frazier and Joe Abercrombie over at the Hawks. And again, just them having a seat at the table and believing that I could actually do this job that didn't exist for them before this year was amazing. And just to get constant feedback from them that they can tell I'm prepared, I'm studying. You and I talk all the time. We'll watch film, we'll watch tape, we'll run stuff back and say, "Okay, Deshaun, this is what I saw. What do you see?" Because it's important for me to let fans know that I take this seriously, that I know they're walking into the arena looking to know what are the keys to the game for the Hawks to win this tonight. Or if we get to halftime, what's the keys to them finishing this thing out? Or what do they need to do to kind of climb the mountain, if you will? So take it very seriously because, like you said, I want people to know that I am a student and I'm going to be a life student of the game because the game is ever evolving and it's just exciting to be able to talk ball and I could do it all day. I absolutely love this. That's why you and I talk so
Mm.
so very much, and it's just a great opportunity that I have, and some other things that are brewing as well. Have an opportunity and have had an opportunity to do some things with the Skyhawks. So even being able to touch the G League, because as we know, just that developmental piece and watching
Mm-hmm.
those guys evolve their game is just as important. So that when they do come up, when they're called up by the NBA franchise, I already have that backstory because I've gone down to College Park and I've watched them grow. So it's just been an exciting time. I mean, just again, if we would have had this conversation even 6 months ago, I probably would
I
have chuckled
know.
and said, "What are you talking about, Deshaun?
I
In-game
know.
answers for the Hawks? What?" And now
Yeah.
here we are.
I know. And it couldn't have happened for a better person. And you just talk about being a student of the game and, just respecting the game and
Yes.
just, sitting under the teaching of people, always kind of picking brains and wanting to
Mhm.
know, not being a know-it-all, and just always knowing that there's something else that you can learn. And like you said, it's
Yes.
always evolving, and just all those things obviously playing a really big part. And nobody's a bigger fan of, the work that you're doing than I am,
Yeah.
just seeing the way that
Same.
you have grown. And I really,
Yeah.
really mean that. Not just saying because we're on here, but I tell you all the time, I leave
All
you
the
text
time.
messages. I can't see every single thing, but in as much of a capacity as I can, you're always doing a great job. And so I definitely want to let you know that it's a pleasure to be able to have the friendship that we have. But
Yes.
in addition to that, to be able to see the growth
Yeah.
that you have been able to put on display, I think it's amazing. And so I'm always the person, whether I'm physically at games or not, that's over there in
Yeah.
the corner like, that's my girl. So I'm
Yeah.
always really happy to see that things are coming to fruition for you in your career, and that you're definitely blossoming. And speaking of blossoming, that's something that this team is gonna kind of look forward to do, as they
Yeah.
are. It hasn't really been, as we transition a little bit now. And speaking of transitioning, it hasn't really been the kind of year following up a run to the Eastern Conference Finals that's
Mhm.
ideal for the Atlanta Hawks, which I think is somewhere right around 12th place in the East.
Yes.
And it just has been a really bumpy road for this team. And the news coming down on today, where the Atlanta Hawks obviously deal Cam Reddish to the New York Knicks
Mhm.
for Kevin Knox
Yes.
and for a protected pick, as long as
Mhm.
it's within the top 18 for the upcoming draft in June.
Yes.
Give me first, before anything, uh, what was your initial reaction like? Is this something that you kind of saw coming? How shocking, maybe how surprising that it was? And did you expect it to maybe happen this early or late? And just kind of curious to know just what sparked your brain when you
Mhm.
first saw the news that came about earlier today.
My mind went back to last offseason first. And you and I talked throughout the offseason about what the Hawks were going to do and what kind of moves they were going to make. And for me, the Hawks didn't make any big splash moves. They made some moves. We know, of course, they acquired DeLon Wright, Gorgie Jang. So there were some moves and putting some pieces in place. But the offseason was a little bit quieter from the Hawks than I thought it was going to be, if we're being honest. But I thought, okay, that to me signals Travis Schlink and company, the GM, really is confident that they have enough of the core to be able to contend in the East and at least get back to where they were, which was the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Felt like with your core group of your Trey Young, John Collins, whom they decided to bring back and give the contract to, and even Trey Young getting the extended contract. You look at Bogdan Bogdanovic, Clint Capella, and of course a healthy DeAndre Hunter, and you're thinking, okay, they're fine with that core, and even with some of those pieces that they put in place, and even bringing back Lou Will on a 1-year contract, they feel like they've got the second unit in place to get them to where they want to be. But I was always wondering in the back of my mind, but what about? And Cam
Mm-hmm.
Reddish was always on the what about list for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is he going to be that player who can even contend and compete for a starting position or to be in that starting rotation on a regular basis? Is his body going to allow him to do it? Is his growth, and you called it out with me in a good way in terms of the maturation, right? You have the basketball IQ. Is your basketball IQ evolving enough in addition to what your game is actually going to produce on the court to give the Hawks what they need? It was
Mm-hmm.
always a question for me from day one on him. So funny you should ask the question of whether or not I was shocked. So I had a conversation with a friend of mine last week, and he was asking, what are the Hawks going to do? And I said, well, I said that trade deadline is approaching. I said, so I think they're going to make a move. And Travis Schlink has alluded to it. He comes on the station weekly, and the last 3 weeks has been fire. And he has basically said that he has an expectation of what this team is supposed to be. They're not meeting that expectation, and there may have to be some things done. So we kind of already had a foreshadowing that this was coming. And
No
then
doubt.
last night, as I was preparing, and you and I talking and texting back and forth the last, say, 48 hours as we were getting ready to do pregame and halftime for Hawks Heat. And something hit me in the pregame as I was preparing, and I said, I don't think Travis Schlink is waiting until February 10th or February 9th
Mm-hmm.
or anywhere close to it. I think Travis Schlink might make. And after the third quarter of last night, I literally said to myself, is he going to even get through the rest? Are we getting through the rest of this week without a move? And here we are. So
Yeah.
no, not shocked about the move, and also not shocked about the piece, because when you look across the space of who the Hawks have and the most valuable piece, if you will, and the movable piece, it was pretty much always going to be Cam.
Yeah. Yeah. And it appeared that way after so much time, because he's definitely, at least I feel like, one guy that, you know, you ask yourself, do you ever get tired of seeing flashes and flashes
Yes.
only? Like,
Yes.
is that, and
The
that's, is there
promise
ever
versus
gonna
the
be,
production.
exactly, like, is that all you're ever gonna be able to give? Is that all you're ever gonna see? It's not like you didn't give it the time. You talking about, what, 2.5, 3 years.
Hmm.
How much longer do you give somebody? And then you've got so many wings between Herter, who you just paid, and then
Yeah.
Hunter, who definitely gives you the production when he's healthy, but at
Yes.
least you know what you're getting from him when he's healthy, even though he's not
Agreed.
always healthy. But when it comes to Cam Reddish, he's also a guy that's a lot of
Hmm.
times not healthy.
Yeah.
But when he is healthy, you still don't know what you're going to get. So it almost kind of makes sense, especially from a standpoint of three guys that are kind of linked together,
Yes.
and going to be looking to get paid at some point. And so,
Yeah.
with that being said, there's been some other question marks about him, many of them coming into the NBA and still
Hmm.
appear to exist, if not
Yes.
anything else, on the surface level. But he did come in, during some very key possessions and
Oh yeah.
stretches
Yeah.
of some games, especially last season,
Hmm.
on the back end, and this just seemed like the most ideal time to still get value for this player while you still can.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah.
so I want to um, ask you about this in terms of, as this team gets ready to move forward. Last night we saw first night back in quite a little while for a player like a DeAndre Hunter,
Yes.
who just, in all intents and purposes, you ask a lot of people, this might be the second best player on the
Yes.
team. Talk a little bit about just the energy of being in the arena on yesterday. Hunter's coming back. What kind of ovation, what kind of, I guess, optimism and positivity, that vibe, that energy, that feel that you may have felt in the arena on yesterday when he had the opportunity to take the floor, and how productive you felt like he was from what you were able to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Social media, first of all, was a buzz 2 days ago because he started practicing 5-on-5s. And
Mm-hmm.
we kind of gotten some hints again from Travis Schlink that he was coming back, right? And so just to kind of, you know, make a little joke about it, I won a DeAndre Hunter. That was like my, sort of gift at one of our parties for the Hawks, right? So I was all
Right.
excited, like, man, I'm holding my DeAndre Hunter jersey out until that day, right? So I was over the like everybody can tell you, whether it's at the station, whether it's with the Hawks, etc. I have been talking about the return of Dre for weeks now, because I feel like, and if I could just piggyback on something you just said, but kind of spin it a little bit, to
Sure.
me, Trae Young is the best player. Dre Hunter is the most necessary. So, and I think there's a difference there, because I take nothing away from the fact that Trae Young is not only the best player for the Hawks, but Trae Young is one of the best in the league completely. But there's this other space where your most necessary player is. That's the player that pulls it all together and gives you everything you need and kind of plugs in all the spaces and all the pieces. So you have really hit on it. And I want to go back to it so that we don't just smooth over it, right?
Sure.
When the injury report came out that Clint Capella was doubtful, essentially, which really told us, hey, he's probably not going to play against the Heat last night, and we're now finding out he's basically out for tomorrow night as well. And Gorgie Jenks just coming back from health and safety protocols had just gotten the clearance yesterday. My first thought was, but you got Dre. So
Mm-hmm.
if nothing else, if you're going against the Heat, one of the top 3-point making teams in the league, at least you
Mhm.
have your elite wing defender back. So
Mhm.
that gives you what you need on the outside. But quietly, and the stats don't always tell it for Dre, quietly, Dre disrupts in the paint as well, right? And he disrupts if you're a mid range shooter, he's coming for you. And so
Mhm.
everything that we saw, and even the first 7 or 8 minutes that he was out there, he was establishing himself all across the court as a defender. But then, after affecting just about every play, he's right back there in transition, waiting to make sure you understand that he's also ready to impose his will offensively. Which again, Deshaun, we saw more shades of that at the beginning of this season than any of the other seasons that we had really seen Dre. And so that's what I love about him, the fact that he is the two-way player that he is, arguably the best two-way player on the team. And I think that's what he brings to the table. Yes, the stat line tells the story a lot for what DeAndre Hunter does for the Hawks, but I think in so many ways, like I just gave the example of what I thought about last night, so many ways, and you and I talked about this. We talked about even the mid-range jumper and how that's an underrated weapon, or an underappreciated weapon for the Hawks as it relates to Kev Herter, Bogdan Bogdanovich. But low key, that's something that Dre has improved as well on his shooting touch. So yeah, I just saw a lot from him even last night that said to me, that's the wing. He's the wing that they need the most. And again, taking nothing away from Cam, because he has evolved and he has improved as well in certain areas, but it's the consistency that you get from DeAndre Hunter that makes him arguably, like I said, Dre's the best player, but Dre, I believe, arguably would be the most important player for the Hawks.
And if they could just kind of find a way to keep DeAndre Hunter off the IR, I think that would just obviously be amazing. And that's just kind of
Yeah.
been the Achilles heel of the Hawks in general,
Mm-hmm.
with many of their pieces on the roster, is just that they just haven't been healthy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a surprise to people within, Atlanta, or in this market,
Yeah.
of how well they did in the playoffs yesterday, because number one, they were never coming on TV, so people were getting a chance to see them. But
Right.
even more so, they were never able to put it together because so many of the guys that they acquired and had already had were all hurt at different times and things like
Right.
that. So you never got a chance to see what they look like. And then obviously they all got relatively healthy at the right time, which
Yes.
is what kind of catapulted them to be able to kind of make a run
Yeah.
onto the Eastern Conference Finals. Got my girl Tenitra Batiste up in this thing, man. Episode number 102. Appreciate you guys for joining us. Color commentator, host, sports anchor, in-game analyst for the Atlanta Hawks, Tenitra Batiste, that is. And you can just kind of see my dude Eddie Powell kind of tapping in with us.
Yeah.
Just kind of rooting on Tenitra as well, and just killing it at State Farm like she always does. None of that is surprising in
Thank you.
my estimation. And so when we're talking about this deal, and obviously talking about the Atlanta Hawks as well, and just listen to some of the stuff that you're saying, it's like it's so true, because
Yeah.
DeAndre Hunter is probably the best player on the team with the most balance between offense and defensive productivity and contribution of what he
Yes.
brings to this team.
Yes.
And so that's where you definitely want to give him some credit for that, and seeing how big of a piece that he is and how meaningful he is
Mm-hmm.
to the team. Um, Another piece I want to ask you about, because I don't want to get away from this little part. We have to address these things here on the program, because we don't tap dance, we don't tiptoe, walk on eggshells, and walk on pins and needles. We address them, and we
Yeah.
bring them to the forefront, lay it all out on the table. Obvious reports, and this, I don't think that this is necessarily the first time that John Collins has been
Mm-hmm.
in the news about something, in terms of uh, feeling a way about the way that the team is playing, or that the game is being played, the way that the team is playing, how they're constructing their offenses. I think the
Mm-hmm.
first time I heard something about the ball maybe not getting, and I'm paraphrasing, of course,
Yes.
but leading into a dust up with Trey in a film session, and then of course
Mm-hmm.
most recently earlier this week, and definitely following up some of his comments about expressing his frustrations about the team. But we know that Trey has done the same thing, especially on the defensive side of the ball too.
Yeah.
But John definitely followed up his comments with saying, "I definitely want to be in Atlanta. This is where I want
Yeah.
to be. It's not even close."
Right.
Um, it's just not to me. It's just not sending a good vibe or message. I don't think it's a lose-lose situation for someone like John
Yeah.
because it's because of who John is on this team, and not that he's the most consistent player in the world either.
Right.
But definitely a piece that they need. I personally wish that John was the guy that protected the rim a little bit more than
Mhm.
he does.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, while I don't believe that he's one of the more skilled players in the league, he
Mhm.
definitely been on the recipient end of a lot of lobs from Trey, developed an outside jumper, which I
Yes.
think has really, helped this team and helped his game. But even more so, this isn't a Hawks team that has any little bit of success without him on it either.
Yeah.
And so you definitely got to give him some credit from who I
Mhm.
thought that he would be coming into the NBA and onto this team and who he's become a
Yeah.
fringe all-star essentially. I
Yes.
can do nothing but give the flowers. But the reality is that this big red target, the elephant is still in the room. The
Yes.
comments were still made. Um, what are your overall thoughts about his comments?
Mhm.
How long do you anticipate, or do you, I shouldn't say that, I guess I should phrase it as, do you anticipate John remaining a Hawk for the foreseeable future if things kind of keep on this downward trajectory for this team? Because I don't think it's a secret, Tenitra, and I know
Mhm.
I'm over talking, and I don't want to throw too much at you, but it's not a secret. His name is in so many different conversations on the
Mhm.
regular, maybe about the packaging up for Ben Simmons, or maybe him about being packaged up for someone else, or going over
Yeah.
to Dallas. And you just got your 125 million
Right.
as
Right.
well. I just want to get your overall thoughts on some of those things that I mentioned when it comes to John Collins, because I love him as a
Yeah.
person. I
Yeah.
want to like him more than I do, but some of those inconsistencies are still there, and rim protection is one of
I would agree with it. There's not much that you said that I don't agree with. First of all, and I want to be careful because I don't want it to seem like we're predicating everything on $125 million. But we are predicating some things on $125 million because my expectation of you is that if you are getting that kind of compensation, but I'm looking at Dre Hunter as the most important player, not again, not the best player, but I'm looking at DeAndre Hunter as the most important player. Why am I potentially looking at DeAndre Hunter as the second best, if you will, or the most important or impactful player on that roster? Now, I don't think the answer is a simple one. I think it's very nuanced. When the Hawks decided to give John Collins that deal, I remember saying I wasn't necessarily in agreement with the deal, but I kind of understood the deal. But what I
them.
more important for me
Same.
was what could Nate McMillan do with John Collins in terms of elevating and evolving his game if he had a full season with him.
Mhm.
So the verdict for me is still out because we're not even halfway through the season. And Nate McMillan has had so many fires to put out, from the COVID protocol fires to the injury fires that just won't quit. It's just been bedlam for him. So for
Mhm.
me, it's still a very incomplete grade. It's still something that I can't quite fully assess without taking those outliers into consideration. And yes, I know other teams have injuries, but my God, it feels like once again the Hawks are being decimated. Yes, other teams have had protocol issues, but has a whole team gone into the protocols quite like the Hawks? Not really. So when I look at those bits and pieces, John Collins included, having stayed quite an extended period of time in the protocols, I do give a little bit of kind of putting an asterisk there, but I'm also going to come back and circle back to saying we need more than just one guy to be elite level two-way.
Mhm.
That's what the Hawks need. They need more. We always know that Trey is going to give you offensive firepower when he's completely healthy. And right now, I think he's a little more banged up than we even realize. So offensively, he's going to give it to you. Same thing. If Clint Capella is even at 85%, let alone 100%, he's going to give you all that you're asking for defensively. So then that leaves 2, 3, and 4. So
Mhm.
what are we getting out of 2, 3, and 4 that is elite level or two-way to round this out? And so far, we've seen what's our word? Shades. We've seen flashes. We haven't
Mm-hmm.
seen it consistently. Again, some of that is maybe Nate having the opportunity to figure out once and for all how to fit John Collins into schemes and just putting him in the right places to be able to make plays on offense. But defensively, you put yourself in those positions. You have to be in the right place at the right time on the court on a consistent basis and really impose your will. Because think about it, Deshaun, when we see John Collins impose his will around the rim, when
Yeah.
he's not allowing players to finish at the rim, it's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing. It's
It
a
is.
beautiful thing when we see
It is.
JC bring all that anger and all that passion
Mm-hmm.
and all
Mm-hmm.
that dog.
Yeah.
It's unreal. It's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde situation, right? But there are 82 games in the season. At a minimum, I need to see that 70 games, assuming you got 10 or 12 that you won't play because of injury, COVID, or what have you. That's what I need to see from John. So I will even take back something I said 2 or 3 weeks ago because we were having this debate on the morning show with John Fricke and Hugh Douglas about who was untouchable. And they said basically, besides Trae Young, nobody's untouchable. And I was like, well, I kind of don't feel like Dre, I feel like Dre might be in the untouchable space. John Collins, Kevin Herter, I mean, you just signed them to deals. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I felt like maybe they were untouchable. But Deshaun, that was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We're now
Looks different.
17 and 23 and on the outside of a play-in spot at this point. Yes, I do realize that there is more than half a season, but when you start looking at head-to-head competition and head-to-head matchups and how that could impact if there are ties at the end of the season, we're also on the wrong side of that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when it starts to, and again, not panicking, just saying that's when it starts to become a bit of a concern. But I love what Travis Schlenk said as well. And we always talk about trusting in the Schlenk. You look at him making a comment about what Alex Anthopoulos did with the Braves, making some major moves, making some moves saying, we're not tanking. We're going to actually try to go after this. And then coming up with a World Series with a pennant.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that spoke to, wait a minute, maybe, and again, not singling out John Collins at all, just saying in general, everybody needs to step up their game because maybe Trae Young is the only untouchable. And Travis Schlenk, if he sees especially a wing defender, or if he sees someone out there, or even I know they've got DeLon Wright, they've got Lou Will, but if he even sees maybe somebody else who can be maybe in that guard forward space who could, back up Trae when needed, but could also swing to the 2-3 or even the 4 when needed, I believe I'm going to slightly revise my statement of whatever Travis Schlenk needs to do to get this team back in contention. At this point, I would not be shocked.
I know. I'm glad that you said that, Tenitra Boo, because there's so many other things that I wanted to, places that I wanted to go, and I know we're literally getting ready to be up against it. So I just have one or two more questions for you. And I wanted to jump around and get into some of my personal feelings about all of this, whether it be about Dre, whether it be about double C, Clint Capella, and of course John, and all of that. And I don't want this to turn into a bashing show by
Yeah,
John by any stretch of the
no, not at
imagination.
all.
But
No.
when you mentioned somebody that can be moved, because we know how Travis Schlenk loves to draft and the players that he loves to go after, guys that could be plugged and play
Yes.
at multiple positions that can do different things.
Yes.
The question marks at the 2, the 3, and the 4 spot that you have. My wheels are spinning. You could probably read it through the expression on my face. Everybody's talking about it at this point. It kind of sounds like that's one player that I can think of. Okay. I don't want to be the person to say it. I'm just curious of what you think of it. If not this particular player whose initials begin with BS, and it sounds very fitting probably, but is Benjamin the type of player they need? How do you think that a player like him fits with this team? What are some of your concerns? Do you have Do you believe that it could work? What would that take? And even if we can get away from that, after you answer that just for a quick second, who would be the ideal either A, player that you have in mind, or B, type of player that this team needs to be able to pull things back together? Because the reality is that I believe that this is a team that's also hurting because you won't surprise anybody in year two.
Yes.
Nobody's coming into Atlanta to go out, have fun, party, go to Magic City, eat lemon pepper Lou wings, hang out all night. By the way, we have a game tomorrow.
Right.
Teams are starting to take them more serious and
Yes.
circling them and highlighting them on their calendar. You're not going to shock anybody the next year. And this
Yeah.
is a team who's never had to deal, as young as they still are,
Mm-hmm.
never had to deal with a post-year success in the following year after it. This is their very first time
Yes.
experiencing that as such a young group.
Right.
So with that, what do you think about Benjamin? I call him Benjamin now. What do you feel about Benjamin in a Hawk uniform? How much of that have you been hearing? And who is the type of player or player that you can, by name, that you would like to see for what you feel like they need in order to start trending in the right direction again?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with not feeling it
Okay.
at all. I
Okay.
don't see where the uptick is for him. If I look at the starting 2, 3, 4, and I look at what Bogdan Bogdanovic does, and I'm going back to definitely deep in the playoffs last postseason, and a little bit of shades of what he was before he got injured this season, right?
Mhm.
Then I'm looking at the 2, I'm looking at the 3, I'm looking at the 4, I'm looking at what DeAndre Hunter brings to the table when healthy, and hopefully he can through the rest of this season, right? And I look at what John Collins brings, even with the up and down, and maybe we haven't quite gotten Maxey.
Mhm.
I'm trying to see where Ben Simmons brings something to the table that's going to be exponentially better than what the Hawks have right now.
Mhm.
I just don't see it. I know that he has shades of being an elite defender, but so does DeAndre Hunter. And when John Collins is at his best, so does John Collins. And I would say Bogdan Bogdanovic probably doesn't get enough credit for being, we'll call it solid or an adequate, if you will. So if you already have players
And
who,
Herter.
yep, and I was just about to say, and not only Herter, I was even going to bring into the conversation, and I'm surprised you and I are just now getting to Onyeka Okongwu.
Yes.
But when I think about Kevin Herter and I think about Onyeka Okongwu, and I know the verdict is way, way out with a Jalen Johnson or a Sharif Cooper, but at least the verdict is way, way out on them, and they're just midway through their first year out of the draft, right? So let's just talk about Double O and let's just talk about Kayvon. When you look at all of those names that we've just thrown out there, tell me what Ben Simmons brings to the table is exponentially good enough to accommodate what the Sixers will probably ask for. Because remember, they don't have any trade partners. They haven't had any trade partners so far that they thought were bringing enough to the table that they'd be willing to part ways with Ben
That
Simmons.
person doesn't even exist. Tanisha, let me
No,
just say something real quick.
like at all.
Unless you can put Jesus Christ himself,
Right.
and I say this facetiously, but I almost feel like I'm only halfway kidding for what they're asking.
Right.
If you can put Jesus Christ himself in a Hawk, that
That
might,
might
I
get it.
don't,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah. Yeah. So
maybe good enough.
I do not feel like, especially because if we go back to the trade for today in terms of sending Cam Reddish to the Knicks and also Solomon Hill, we didn't, we haven't talked a lot about that piece as well in terms of one thing that I will kind of go generic on, and that's answering the question about who would be that fit or what type of player would be that fit. So don't let us wrap up without circling back to that because I think it's an important question that you ask. But when I look across the space, I'm thinking to myself, okay, for what the Sixers are asking for and what the Hawks would have to literally give away, like, I mean, how many Hawks are we going to have to package to get Ben Simmons? Do we have enough Hawks to package to get Ben Simmons? And if so, would it be worth packaging all of those players? I'm literally thinking to myself, what are we supposed to give away? Bogey, and Dre and Double O and Kayvon. I mean, and even Gallo. I mean, how many are we going to give? Because, Gallo is a part of that conversation as well about the possibility of packaging him with someone. I honestly thought I was kind of, now that one was a little bit of a shocker. I was wondering if maybe there would have been a Cam Reddish Gallo package that someone would have asked for, if you will. But again, going back to what do you have to give away to get Ben Simmons, and will it be worth it? The other piece there for me as well, which I think is underrated, in addition to looking at the stats for Ben Simmons, you look at the basketball IQ and you look at the dog. And what am I talking about when I say dog? I saw my boy Dwayne Dedmon last night, right? Who's with the Heat now. But he was, when you and I were covering the Hawks, Dedmon was one who just had that dog in him, right? And Damari Carroll was another one who had that dog in him. You need that kind of guy. So if I had to say a type of guy, I want them to go out and get that dog, because Trey has it naturally, because Trey is just a killer, right? But you kind of need more than one killer on your team, just like we talk about having the big three. Some teams even have a big four, if you will. That's the type of player. Ben Simmons doesn't have that in him. So what I would like to see is the type of player who has some two-way something going on with what they bring to the table.
Little edge.
There you go. So I want an elite defender who can score. Okay. And yeah, you might say, well, God, that's asking for a lot. Well, for a team that's looking to at least get back to the Eastern Conference Finals or get over the hump and be able to contend with the likes of the Bucks and the Nets, and heck, this year contend with the Bulls and the Heat. And I could just go, on and on how the Eastern Conference seemingly at the top has kind of taken it up a notch. You want that guy. You need an elite defender who also has the ability to score, who has the ability, to finish, who has the ability to at times create, his own shot. But I want that intangible. Like, I want that guy who is going to be like, you're not coming in our house and not doing what you want to do, right? You're not going to impose your will in our house. And when we come to your house, we're going to impose ours. That's the guy that I feel like, if I take away the obvious in terms of the technical skills on the court, I want that edge. I want that guy to know you're not about to push the Hawks around, because this is a different brand of Hawks basketball, right? Yeah.
I say this in the sense of, in the nicest way possible. People probably say you shouldn't say it, but it's my platform. I'm going to say it, There's some, instances where I feel like, and I hope people know what I'm saying by what I'm saying, hopefully reading between the lines. But, when you're looking for that player with that edge, that dog, that grit, that glue guy, that whether it be a Marcus Smart type or a Draymond Green or whatever, the player that everybody hates playing against but loves playing with. It almost sometimes kind of has the feel to me like the Hawks have too many players on their team that come from two-parent households. Now, people say you shouldn't say that. I understand.
But I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Shouldn't say that. And that doesn't mean if you do come from two-parent households that you can't be this over here. Not what I mean. But you got to have exactly what you said. Somebody who's going to impose that will. Somebody that has been around the block a little bit. Somebody that's not afraid to get a little dirt under their nails, get their hands dirty a little bit. Somebody that, when there's a scuffle coming or whatever, somebody's going to stand in the way and say, that's my point guard. You got to go through me first before you're going, those types of players. So as long as I think we're on the.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And that person who is willing to who can back it up with his play, right? That's who we want. That person who can indeed.
But I will say enough to say, I hope that I didn't ruffle any feathers. But
no. And I know what you mean. I know that's one of our kind of urban dictionary jokes, if you will. But you're saying a person who is not afraid to really like speak on it. I saw this article today that talked about the best trash talkers in the NBA, and Trey's got a little edge to him, right?
He got a little edge.
Yeah, because
a little light skin, but we got some edge too. Listen, y'all gonna get enough of calling. Listen, y'all
Yeah.
don't get enough for calling us sensitive. All
Yeah,
right, we
no,
gonna
not
show
that. No, he's got some edge to him because I have said from day one, as you know, the Luka Doncic, Trae Young trade rages on. Who got the better deal? Both cities won because Luka fits Dallas, Trae fits Atlanta. It all works. It works. And Clint Capella, I take nothing away from him because he's got quiet dog in him, right? Clint's not going to say too much. Not going to trash talk you too much, but he's going to make sure that guy doing all the dirty work. So he actually kind of reminds me a little bit of a Carol, if you will. I'm just going to quietly do the dirty work. But I do think you may need another guy or two who has the dog and the edge night in, night out, because we see shades of it from different players on the Hawk squad. But that's the kind of guy I want. Oh, and Deshaun, another thought that came to mind is it would be great if we could have, I would call it a young veteran, right? Maybe who's right in that 5, 6, 7 year range, who has found his stride, he worked all the kinks out of his game, but has a lot of runway ahead of him. Would love to see.
Almost kind of gives me a feel of like keep a close eye on this guy, Mitchell Robinson. Keep a close eye on him. Highly energetic.
Yep.
Has been around for a little bit, maybe not an extremely long time.
Yes.
But been around somewhere close to about a handful of years almost. And just a no nonsense, zero tolerance.
Yes.
And a guy that's going to protect the rim, can finish lobs.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of like that idea. We'll have to get back into that one.
Yeah, because there are a number of ways that can go. So that's why I was a little hesitant about giving a name, because offline, it's interesting because depending on whose take you and no pun intended, Tate, but depending on whose take you kind of listen to, some would say, oh, you know, the Hawks were heavy at the wing position, but if you look on that roster, you could make the argument that they're kind of heavy at the guard spot too now. And you know, obviously several of those players can swing in either position, but I'm interested to see, because we talk about this all the time, a DeLon Wright and a Lou Will, those are your options to Trae, right? What I loved about Lou, and I was excited that they brought him back the extra year, was that veteran presence and being able to stabilize the second unit. And I do think that might be an underrated piece that you needed in that backup guard position. So I liked that. DeLon Wright, I'm going to need to see more of what we saw him do when the Hawks played the Kings. So if I can get that DeLon Wright on a regular basis, fine, we're good. But assuming that we may not get that DeLon Wright on a regular basis, then there may be a possibility that, as we talk about, you know, what Travis Schlink's moves look like, he may be considering that piece as well, because like I said, Trae has been phenomenal this season, but he's a little banged up already. Like he took a really, really big hit. And, you know, that back contusion last week, I think is bothering him. I saw him with the ice packs on his knees in the first quarter last night. Early in the first quarter, he had to get a sub in. So you look at that as well, because you want the best Trae for the long haul. Yeah, in case you are able to put something together on the backside of the season and potentially go deep into the postseason. So still a lot of moving parts, Deshaun, a lot of question marks, and a lot of opportunity, I'm going to call it, for Nate McMillan to really reset things. But that's another thing. We talk about X factors on the court. He's still my X factor off the court, because what Nate was able to do last year, I do believe that there is an opportunity for him to do the same and right the ship this year. It's just a matter of, can Travis Schlink, are there enough pieces that he can bring to the table, enough bargaining chips to go out there and find that right piece now that you have that roster spot that's open? And whether or not you get somebody who is able to, obviously you want to win now, so you get that person who can win now, but I'd love to see somebody who could get us in position to win now, but even put us in position to keep doing this down the road. Because like I said, I think that the Eastern Conference, the top portion of the Eastern Conference, it surprised a lot of people
Mhm.
just how good some teams have gotten so quickly. And the Hawks want to be in that conversation. Hawks want to be back in that conversation.
A lot of basketball left to be played. It wouldn't surprise me to see this team look so much better on the second half of the season after the
Agreed.
All-Star break. That's typically what they've done. When Trae Young was coming in, being very young, didn't look great in the first half, looked
Mm-hmm.
good in the second half. Everybody kind of went through that same kind of a spell. Cam Reddish did the same thing.
Yes.
I think everybody, like these teams, just whatever it is, the Hawks teams have just looked so much better on the second half of a season for the last X amount of years than they have in the first, including some of the players and so forth. And a lot of it is credit to Travis Schlenk and some of the moves that they made. So much of it still remains to be seen. And as we kind of keep our eyes and ears glued
Mm-hmm.
close to what the Atlanta Hawks are going to do in the coming days, weeks, months
Yes.
leading into the postseason and so forth. We definitely want to keep ourselves posted and follow Tenitra at Tenitra Batiste. You see it there at the bottom on the ticker. Catch her on IG, on Twitter at Tenitra Batiste. Gonna be, definitely tweeting different things out and just being active and so forth. And just, I love the mentality and the spirit that she has, and I always have, and really happy to see the things that she's doing. If you haven't had a chance to get down there to State Farm Arena, get
Yeah.
there early. She's doing her pregame thing. Stick around at the half. Don't wander off until going to get the hot dog and everything
Right.
else.
Right.
Stay in your seat at least until she's done doing her thing, because it is definitely a grand time, and I think that you would definitely be able to enjoy some of the in-depth analysis that she's able to give in just a very small window and short period of time to support my girl in doing her thing. Again, Tenitra Batiste, color commentator, reporter, sports anchor, radio show host, doing some of her own stuff personally on her own platforms and so forth. In-game analyst for the Atlanta Hawks. Tenitra, I appreciate you for coming on. I can't tell you just how proud of you that I am. Trying not to get long-winded, but it's impossible. I just really wanted to
That's what we
settle in
do.
as much as possible,
Yeah.
and just simmer in with just how proud I am of you on just the opportunities that you've gotten, just us sitting next to each other and just trying to blossom and grow together within this
Yes.
business, and the opportunity that has come your way is more than deserved. Actually, they're super late and delayed, but we're all working on God's time, and when His
Yes.
timing is the most important thing. So,
Absolutely.
closing remarks, feel free before we get ready to disconnect this portion of the show.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to the trade today, my thought on it is sometimes we want to give a quick grade, right? To me, incomplete is the grade here. I want to really see what Travis Schlink is going to do with this, because I don't think this is
I
the end
like
of this
that.
deal.
I
Yeah.
like that.
So I would love for you and I know we will, whether it's offline or online, to come back and talk about this, because I really feel like this was a leveraging tool for him. This is
Mhm.
not where this deal ends. This deal will give Travis Schlink some leverage for whatever else he has in the works. So he's looking at the bigger picture. So right now, I know some people are scratching their heads, even though we all know the reality of it is that in all likelihood it was going to be Cam Reddish, because we
Mhm.
actually thought this was going to go potentially draft night, right? And a lot of people
Mhm.
walked away from draft. Wow, Cam Reddish is still with the Hawks. Oh, okay. So this has been something that's been brewing for a minute, and like you said,
Long time.
buzz comes up about John Collins. Buzz comes up about Danilo Gallinari being a part of a package deal. So there are definitely some pieces to this that don't shock anybody except maybe Solomon Hill, because he low key, now that guy had some dog in him. Maybe
Mhm.
didn't have that skill level at the highest, but certainly the dog was there. So certainly was kind of disappointed, shocked, but understand, because that's a piece
Mhm.
give to the Knicks to get what it is that you want. But again, I think this is, and I'm gonna say Travis Link, maybe in his mad scientist coat, and he's in the lab cooking up something that's going to impact the Hawks in a bigger way. And I'm just sitting and I'm going to give him an incomplete grade right now because I'm waiting to see what the next part of this move is going to mean for the Hawks for the end of this season, but on through for years to come, because he comes from the pedigree of the Warriors, where it's not just about building for the now, even though we do want to win now. He's looking at how to build this into there you go, exactly, future contender. And what do we need to do right now, even if it's taking what looks like an L on the surface, or it's making people scratch their heads, or they're wondering, wow, did the Hawks win this or did the Knicks win this? Maybe the Knicks won this deal in the short term because they get Cam Reddish, and they're ready to see if there's more production than promise, and they're getting him back with RJ Barrett, and they're building up their cadre of young wings, which is great. And people are wondering if the Hawks won. The Hawks are going to win eventually with this. I'm just here for it to see how it plays out.
I know that's right. You and me both. And there's
Yeah.
still so many layers to the onion to peel off. And I think that you're spot on with saying incomplete until until we find out a little bit more further. Don't forget Cam Reddish being that same player that also helped that trade happen. Luka
Yes,
Doncic for Trae Young. And I
indeed.
think the consensus will probably agree that everybody kind of somewhat in a roundabout way knew or felt like the best of what we would see from Cam Reddish, unfortunately, would come when he's no longer in a Hawks uniform. So I think that that's another piece. Takes different people, different time to develop. Tenitra, listen, we're gonna have to get you back on here
Yes.
sometime within at least the coming weeks, up to like 30 days or somewhere right up in that range, so that we can kind of assess where things fell with this whole trade and who
Yes.
what came of it and things like that. And I'll definitely have the opportunity to, of course, text you and be able to ring your phone. Hopefully see you in
Oh,
State
yeah.
Farm Arena again sometime really soon when I'm not as busy doing
Yes.
some of the other things that I've been busy doing. But I do want to tell you, I do appreciate you for joining me for this
Oh,
particular
same. Thank you.
segment.
Thank
And
you.
blessings, prosperity to you. Again, very, very proud of you and
Thank
very happy to see you in your element. And I know that you're going to do great things.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, man. And go Hawks. Let's go, Hawks. Let's go get it. We
There you
still got
go.
a
Wear your
lot of ball
red.
to be
There you
played.
go. I saw a lot of people during the postseason that ran out there wearing their red and talking a whole lot about the Hawks, and then you tend to disappear. Don't be one of those fans that people outside of Atlanta point the finger at for being that type of fan. Stay
Indeed.
down, true to Atlanta, believe when they're doing good, be right there when they're not doing as nearly as good.
Yes.
That's my girl Tenitra Batiste right there, and I do appreciate her for coming in and joining me here on the set and just being here to kick some knowledge around as an in-game analyst. I'm so proud of her. Nobody more proud of her than I am. I promise you that. Be on alert. Coming up, we're going to be doing Tate's Take Tuesdays coming up. Part of next week, and trying to get back into some more college basketball. Obviously, we're done with all that football stuff, that football garbage, and doing some more NBA things as well. So right now, on the surface level, things are starting to kind of go in the way that we want them to again here with the program. And I just appreciate everybody for being a consistent and loyal listener and watcher as well. At Tate's Take Hoops on Twitter, TATESTAKEHOOPS, hashtag where basketball lives. And remember to go and subscribe anywhere you find your favorite podcast, including make sure that you leave us a nice little review. If you are enjoying this content, be sure to let us know. And I really appreciate you guys for coming out, and hope that you enjoyed this episode. So until next time, episode number 103 with 102 in the books. See you in a minute.